My name is Sarah Ingersoll. I don't usually like putting myself out there, but there's something terrible going on in my community. It's really, really bad. It's bullying. I was bullied growing up, and it's an awful thing. When I realized there were adults bullying others in my own backyard, I knew I had to say something, even if I felt uncomfortable doing so. Tim Ritter was my principal at Chaparral High School. He wasn't friendly to me. In fact, I would look up at him, try and make a loud joke that he might hear and laugh at, and smile when he was close by. But he never smiled back. He never acknowledged me. He just gave me strange looks or looked over my head. He would talk to other students around me, but never acted like I even existed. My sister tried to make me feel better and said he was just uncomfortable around me because I was disabled. But that didn't make me feel any better. It made me feel worse. I was a student, and I wanted him to notice me, to talk to me, to know my name. Conversely, when I go to my younger sister's campus and see Mrs. Hayes, she was awesome. She would always smile at me and make me feel welcome. She was so warm and inviting, and it wasn't just with me. It was with all the students. I remember wishing that she was my principal. She seemed to literally know every student's name. It was crazy. She was the nicest principal that I had ever met. But that was a long time ago. Now I'm an adult, and my niece goes to Margarita, and Mrs. Hayes is her principal. Actually, was her principal. There are some bullies in Temecula. I went to a town hall meeting at Wilson Creek and found out a few male union protected teachers were bullying Mrs. Hayes, and several female teachers for the past several years. Even though Mrs. Hayes pleaded for help from the district, nothing changed. My heart sank as I listened to teacher after teacher after teacher get up there on stage and nervously tell their stories. Some cried, some shook. I cried, I shook. I got angry because, you know what? That principal of mine that wasn't a very nice man, well, guess what? He's now the superintendent that is allowing this bullying to go on. And you know what else? When Mrs. Hayes tried to hold these male union teachers accountable, Mr. Ritter terminated her. That's right, you heard me. She was there for 13 years and was principal of the year. She was always mentoring other principals. She was the one everyone loved. But he said she was showing bias towards some female teacher that had been harassed by a male teacher. Hello? Are you kidding me? This is why you fired Mrs. Hayes? So tonight, along with several hundred other SaveHayes.com supporters donning blue Save Hayes shirts, I listened to the board president discuss the case at the board meeting. I thought, okay, this will get better. He's a doctor. I think someone said an oral surgeon. Doctors make good decisions, right? I sure have seen my share of doctors, and I've always been super grateful for them. So I'm feeling pretty good. But then he starts to talk. Oh no. His voice, his face. He's a doctor? He was so demeaning. So mean. His tone. The things he was saying. Lies. He tried to defame Mrs. Hayes. He talked about her letter at the town hall meeting, trying to discredit it. But not a single word about the 5 teachers that spoke and maybe 5 more that stood up there in support and sharing stories of the terrible bullying and harassment that had been happening at the school for the past 5 years. Some shared the stories of it being done in front of children. Parents stood up and gave amazing speeches. Spoke about how they had over 1,000 signatures asking for her return. Margarita doesn't even have 1,000 students. But this community has so much love for her, but the school board didn't care. Mr. Ritter didn't care. I guess the opinion article I read in the paper this morning about the board protecting the union bullying teachers is true. And after watching Mr. Kolsiker tonight, a light bulb went on. Of course. My dad used to always say, you learn from the top down. Mr. Kolsiker was bullying Mrs. Hayes. He was a calculated and demeaning attack on her character and humiliating her in a public setting, just like one of the male teachers was doing to that teacher that spoke at the town hall. Mrs. De Leon, I think. I hope someone with more power than Mr. Kolsiker and the rest of the bullies will see this tonight. I don't want to call him Dr. Kolsiker because I've seen about 200 doctors and he's nothing like any doctor that I've ever seen. And you know what? I don't know what else to say about that. We need someone to shine a bright light on these bullies so the rest of the world can see what they are doing. A lot of kids at Margarita are saying that the bad guys won, and it's not always best to do the right thing. That is the wrong message we are teaching these kids. I'm little in size, but big in spirit. And I need your help out there to show the kids in my community. If I can stand here and talk about it, then they can stand up and talk about it too. Justice will prevail. And it's always right to do the right thing.